to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hi, I'm Dana Torst, and welcome to another episode of the Truth in My Days radio program. Today, I'm here with John Torst and Jason Chan as they discuss the important topic of creation and evolution.
We are continuing from the previous episode. We hope you enjoy.
We have found literally billions of fossils. Billions of them, and we have not found one genuine intermediate form. Not one. And now statistically, you should have more intermediate forms than you have final forms, and we've not found one. Okay, that's a problem. It supposedly took 100 million years for a fish to evolve from an invertebrate, and there must have been hundreds of thousands of intermediate forms between an invertebrate and a fish, and yet we have not one transitional form, not one of these intermediates. Supposedly 50 million years for this fish then to evolve into an amphibian, but again, not one genuine transitional form. Not one single fossil that has something that's part fin, part feet. Nothing. And that's true between every major plant and animal kind. They just appear in the fossil record, and they're in the fossil record. They may disappear. If they've gone extinct, they may still be there, but no intermediate forms.
Interesting.
Now, of course, the evolutionists will try to get around that. They'll say, we do have intermediate forms. Now, remember, a genuine intermediate form has incomplete structures, organ systems, partway between the two finished forms. They have nothing like that. And what they do offer is very much desperate gambits that fail in the end. They will try to tell you that whales evolved from land animals. And they will point to a few fossils that are supposedly walking whales. Now you might ask, how do we know that these are ancestors of whales? They're essentially just fossils that you dug out of the ground. Well, they claim they are. You've got the ambulocetus, which really just means walking whale. And this was supposed to be a transitional form between other ancestors of the whales, the Pachycetus and the Rhodocetus. Okay. Now, an evolutionist who was researching this fossil said that there are 8 characteristics that show that ambulocetus was a whale ancestor. His key piece of evidence was a certain bone in the ear, the so-called sigmoid process, which supposedly was like a whale, but in fact it's actually nothing like a whale ear bone. He claimed that the cheekbone is like a whale because it's very thin, but actually when you examine the fossil, it's not thin at all. In fact, it's thicker than a horse's cheekbone. At the end of the day, none of these 8 features are whale-like at all. And there was a certain degree of dishonesty here because some models of the ambulocetus skull were passed on to museums. And if you look at the snout of the skull, you see a blowhole there. Because, whales have blowholes, so this shows us on the way to being a whale. But the actual fossil has no such blowhole. That's not exactly honest. If we look at these supposed whale ancestors, and this is given to you on PBS, this is given to you in the schools to convince the children that evolution is true. They're asked to describe these fossils. We have the Pachycetus. Okay? Now, Pachycetus, again, same thing. The only evidence they pointed to is that it has the characteristic whale ear. But once again, it's not whale-like. It doesn't even have a sigmoid process. It's plate-like, which means it's typical of land animals. There's nothing about Pachycetus to suggest that it is the ancestor of a whale. The bones and the flippers may be somewhat similar to monkeys, but that doesn't make it a whale. That shows a common designer, because there's no naturalistic mechanism to make such a change anyway. They have another one called the Basilosaurus. It had tiny little hind legs, they say. Evolved tiny little hind legs. And you get a bit of problem there, because why would a land animal that has normal hind legs, why would it evolve them to shrink, to become tiny? How does that enhance its survival? And when we study the the bones of the supposed tiny hind legs, it looks like they're actually reproductive claspers. They're not even legs at all. It was fully aquatic, and the shape of its body and of its teeth rule out it being a whale ancestor. We have a Synonyx is also supposed to be a whale-like ancestor. It's simply a cat-like animal. There's nothing about it. Nothing about it that's whale-like. And here's the thing. Okay? People have no idea. Okay? They say, oh, look, its ear is sort of like a whale. That means it evolved. They have no idea what it would actually take to go from a land animal to a whale. Let me give you a partial list of the changes that would have had to have taken place for this to happen. Okay? And it comes from Dr. Richard Sternberg via Don Batten in an article in Journal of Creation. First, it would need a countercurrent heat exchanger for intra-abdominal testes to keep them cool. The vertebra would have to become ball vertebra, so the tail would move up and down instead of side to side like land animals. You would need to develop tail flukes and musculature. The whale this land animal would have to develop vast amounts of blubber to insulate, temperature insulation when it's in the ocean. Oh, here's a fun one. It would have to evolve the ability to drink seawater. Land animals drink fresh water. Whales have to drink seawater. It's salty. Okay? Land animals can't drink salt water. If you drink that, you die from it. The whale can because its kidney tissues are very different. So evolution would have to reorganize the kidney tissues. But how long does that take? What does the whale drink for all that time? Don't you think it would perhaps die of thirst while it's waiting for its kidney tissues to reorganize? It would have to change to giving birth with the fetus in the breech position for birth underwater. Again, how does it reproduce while it's waiting for this to happen? Okay? The offspring will keep dying, and that's the end. The DNA doesn't pass on anymore. And if it survives, you'd have to modify the mammae so that it could nurse the young underwater. So until that happens, how do the young eat? Well, they don't. They starve to death. End of story. The forelimbs would have to transform into flippers. The hind limbs would have to shrink. You'd have to reduce or lose the pelvis and sacral vertebrae. You'd have to reorganize the musculature for the reproductive organs. You'd have to change hydrodynamic properties of the skin. You'd need special lung surfactants. You need a novel muscle system for the blowhole. Isn't that fun? Like, how do you breathe until those muscles just happen to evolve? The teeth would have to change. Modification of the eye for underwater vision. Land animals don't see well underwater. So there's your land animal. I think I want to become a sea animal. And he's in the water and he can't give birth properly. His offspring die. He can't feed them. She can't feed them. Freezes because they don't have the blubber yet for insulation. Very, very thirsty because he can't drink the seawater. And he can't see where it's going. And it can't see the predators coming at it to eat it. So many things that would have to change. People have no idea. They have no idea. They think, oh yeah, sure. Oh, you can change from a land animal to a whale. They have no idea how many things would have to change. And they'd all have to change together. Otherwise, the animal would not survive in the sea. Okay? And when you hear it, then you realize how ridiculous it is. But people don't hear it. And so there are a few animals like this, so-called missing links that they point to. One favorite is the Tiktaalik, which consists of a skull and a fin, and they claim that this is a transitional form between fish and tetrapods. Because they say, you see the Tiktaalik, it uses its fins to walk on land. In fact, the Tiktaalik's fin was not attached to its main skeleton, could not possibly have been used, could not have supported its weight on land. Okay? And the other thing is, you've never actually seen the thing. So how do you know what it uses its fins for? Can we just figure out by looking at the shape of it? Yes, the evolutionists will tell you. No, the facts will tell you. Have you heard of the coelacanth? The coelacanth was a fish that's supposedly prehistoric. It supposedly died out 65 million years ago with the dinosaurs, but we found a number of fossils of the coelacanth. And if you look at the fossils, you see these robust fins on the bottom. And we were told by the evolutionists that the coelacanth used these fins, sort of like feet, to crawl around on the bottom of the sea. And this was a transitional form. These fins were on their way to becoming legs as they were moving from fish to tetrapod. That's an animal that walks on 4 legs. And it's a fact. I mean, you can look at the fossil, you can tell exactly what it did with those fins. And then the whole story collapsed in 1938 when fishermen fishing off the coast of South Africa actually hauled in a live coelacanth. Turned out it didn't die out 65 million years ago. And they found entire populations of them still alive, many of them off of Indonesia. So now we don't have to guess what they did with their fins from the fossils. We look at what they do. We can see them. And you know what? They use their fins like any other fish to propel themselves through the water. They do not walk on the bottom with these fins. You should remember that the next time evolutionists tell you, oh yeah, we can look at the fossils and we can tell you for sure this is what it did and therefore it's a transitional form. No, they can't. They make stuff up. With the Tiktaalik, even they have to give up on it because they eventually found tetrapod tracks, what they believe are tetrapods, from millions of years before the Tiktaalik. Okay? Well, just like you can't be older than your grandmother, if tetrapods were already around at the time of Tiktaalik and before Tiktaalik, then the Tiktaalik cannot be their ancestor, can it? Ooh, but they love to say things that just sound so impressive because ordinary people can't understand it. You will read something like this. Although the size and general robusticity of the pelvis is derived relative to other finned forms, aspects of the general architecture of the girdle are plesiomorphic. Antecedents of canonical tetrapod pelvic characteristics are seen in Tiktaalik. Although Tiktaalik lacks a sacral rib connecting the pelvic girdle with the vertebral column, the iliac blade is relatively more massive and dorsally expanded than in fish. Any idea what that means?
I have no idea what that means.
No idea. You know, people have no idea what that means, and I said, wow, that sounds good. It's got to be a transitional form, because who can argue with that? Let me translate that into ordinary human speech. And this is what it comes down to. Tiktaalik's pelvis may be as large as a tetrapod pelvis, but in fact it looks like a fish pelvis, and without the rib connecting it to the backbone, the pelvis and its fins cannot bear weight on land. So it works like a fish pelvis. Thus the pelvis is obviously simply that of a fish. So Tiktaalik is a fish. It's not an ancestral form, never was. But this is how desperate they are to have them to promote evolution, that they keep trying to tell you that we have them when they really don't. But now of all fossils, the most fun ones, the ones where you get the most claims of ancestors, is of course the hominids. All these human ancestors. We have all these bones and skulls and body parts of human ancestors. So we know that human beings evolved from ape-like creatures. Now, modern apes, they like to say, you say humans evolved from apes, and so you don't know what you're talking about. We didn't evolve from apes, which is not strictly true. I mean, nobody thinks we evolved from modern apes like gorillas and orangutans. But they will say, okay, so what did we evolve from? Oh, Australopithecus. What kind of animal was that? It was an ape. So we did evolve from apes. Yeah. That's the claim. This is from Time Magazine, 1994.
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but please join us for the next part tomorrow. Same time and same place. If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to share any questions or comments you may have. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, and YouTube. Simply search Truth in My Days as one word. Again, Truth in My Days as one word, no spaces in between. And you can connect with us. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com. Thank you.